Those cities of Sumer and their neighbors were destroyed long ago, yet the ruins still seem to echo with the agony, wretchedness, and misery of conquest. Before I die, please listen. Those 6 words, written by Samuel Noah Kramer, the world's greatest Assyriologist, changed everything we thought we knew about ancient history. Kramer was no mystic chasing myths. He was the scholar who spent his life decoding the clay tablets of Sumer, the world's first civilization. But in his final years, as illness consumed him, he began to hint at a truth too dangerous to publish. He came to believe that the Sumerians were not just recording history, they were programming it. What he uncovered within those tablets was not merely the first language of humankind, but a system designed to control reality itself. The deeper he read, the more convinced he became that our modern world is still running on their blueprint. For decades, Kramer translated thousands of Sumerian texts, temple hymns, royal decrees, inventories, and tax rolls. To most, these were mundane records of a society learning to write, but something didn't fit. Certain phrases repeated endlessly, identical lines appearing in unrelated texts. A hymn to a goddess would share a sentence with a warehouse ledger. A builder's log would echo a ritual chant. One phrase in particular haunted him: to raise the pure mountain and bind heaven and earth. It appeared both in sacred songs and construction records. Why would a line about uniting heaven and earth appear in a builder's account book? It wasn't coincidence. These phrases, Kramer realized, were deliberate formulas woven across every form of writing, linking religion, politics, and daily life. To the Sumerians, there was no separation between record-keeping and ritual. Every grain counted, every tax paid, every temple raised was an act of cosmic alignment. Writing, Kramer concluded, was not a neutral tool, it was an operating system. Once he saw that, he could no longer look at the ancient world or ours the same way. When he stood before the ruins of the ziggurat at Ur, he realized that the tablets and the temple were the same text in different forms. The massive structure wasn't just architecture, it was a three-dimensional sentence. Every step, every ratio, 3, 7, 12, 60, mirrored the numerical and linguistic patterns carved into Sumerian tablets. To climb the ziggurat was to ascend through layers of meaning: earthly, celestial, divine. The builders used the same verbs as the priests: to purify, to bind, to ascend. The ziggurat was theology turned to stone, a living sentence translating faith into geometry. Kramer called it a feedback loop. Faith shaped form and form reinforced faith. The scribes, not the kings, were the hidden architects of this system. Pressing wedges into clay, they encoded power itself. To write that a king was chosen by the gods didn't describe power, it created it. The act of inscription made the statement real. Over time, the scribes blurred every boundary between law and myth, decree and prayer. They became the engineers of civilization, their language the circuitry of reality. Kramer called this the Sumerian code, a self-replicating algorithm embedded in language, number, and ritual. The ziggurat, the temple, the grain list, all obeyed the same logic. The system didn't need armies to control people, it needed only symbols everyone agreed to obey. To rule the mind, Kramer wrote, one must only rule the symbols. He discovered that Sumerian mathematics, too, was sacred. Numbers like 3, 7, 12, and 60 appeared everywhere, from temple rituals to trade records. To modern scholars, they were units of measure. To the Sumerians, they were laws of harmony. Every exchange, every sacrifice, every architectural dimension echoed the same cosmic pattern. Counting was praying, measuring was obeying. Kramer called it ritual mathematics, a system that synchronized society to divine proportion. It wasn't efficiency, it was theology disguised as accounting. Even today, our 60-minute hours and 12-month years are remnants of that sacred arithmetic. The Sumerian system encoded obedience as order. By turning calculation into ritual, they transformed daily life into worship. Kramer saw this not as coincidence but as design. Words, numbers, and architecture formed an interlocking program, the first algorithm of belief. By the time his health began to fail, Kramer understood that the code wasn't something to be deciphered but something to be recognized. It was a cultural operating system that reproduced itself across generations. Language imposed structure, structure reflected divinity, and divinity justified hierarchy. The code was self-correcting. If one part fell, the others rewrote it. Civilization, he realized, had learned to automate belief. The text affirmed the temple embodied the text. What he described to colleagues as metaphor, he wrote in his notebooks as fact. The code did not describe order, it produced it. Through centuries and empires, Babylon, Assyria, Persia, the syntax endured, reinterpreted but never broken. It became the prototype for every ideology that followed: religion, government, law, bureaucracy. Sumer had built the first artificial order, one powered by language instead of electricity. In his last years, Kramer's fascination turned to dread. He no longer saw writing as a record of civilization but as its engine. The clay tablets were not archives but circuits shaping the minds that read them. Every wedge pressed into clay was an act of engineering, not of machines but of meaning. Writing is not neutral, he told his students. It creates what it names. The Sumerians didn't describe their gods, they wrote them into being. Each sign was a ritual device, each scribe a priest of reality. To write was to rule. The script's complexity ensured exclusivity. Only trained scribes could read or write it, forming the first priesthood of meaning. They decided which truths endured. When they inscribed that a ruler had divine favor, it became law. Writing didn't mirror truth, it manufactured it. Kramer compared cuneiform to programming code. Words were commands, repetition was execution, and each tablet a subroutine in civilization's operating system. He called this reality inscription, the process by which writing doesn't describe the world but defines it. He began warning that the greatest lie of literacy was the belief that writing is neutral. It was never neutral, it was control. The Sumerians had fused language, law, and faith into one self-reinforcing loop. Tax records and prayers served the same purpose, to maintain order. Syntax became structure, structure became society. Each inscription reinforced hierarchy, binding the divine to the political. To live in a Sumerian city was to live inside language itself. Kramer saw disturbing parallels in the modern world. What the scribes did with styluses and clay, we now do with keyboards and screens. Bureaucracy, religion, and media still operate on inherited patterns of symbolic control. Laws are inscriptions in digital stone. Myths are marketing campaigns refined over millennia. The mechanism endures, invisible yet absolute. He called it the persistence of the tablet, the unbroken chain of symbolic authority from Uruk to the internet. Kramer's final writings became increasingly personal. He confessed that writing, which once gave humanity memory, had also given it forgetfulness, the illusion that words are eternal when they are merely loops replaying the same structures of power. Humanity, he feared, had become trapped inside its own inscriptions, forever executing a program written 5,000 years ago. We still build temples of paperwork and digital ziggurats of data, each promising truth but enforcing obedience. In his last lecture, Kramer said civilization sustains itself not by force but by narrative continuity. The Sumerians didn't invent writing, he said softly. They invented agreement. Those who write the story rule the world even after they're gone. In his final note scrawled beside his bed, he repeated his plea. Before I die, please listen. The Sumerians discovered that to create order, one must first create the story of order. The story becomes the structure. The structure becomes the world. Those who write the story rule the world. Kramer died soon after, but his warning outlived him. The tablets, he said, never stopped speaking, we just changed the medium. Today, the same algorithm hums beneath our laws, contracts, and screens. Every time we call something official, verified, or in writing, we echo faith born in Sumer that what is written is what is real. The Sumerian system didn't vanish, it evolved. Clay turned to paper, paper to pixels, but the mechanism, language fused with authority, remains intact. Kramer's confession wasn't about the ancient world, it was about ours. The true legacy of the first civilization wasn't kingship or agriculture, it was the ability to encode belief so deeply that no one remembers it was encoded. The scribes built systems that spoke for themselves. We call it progress, they would have called it continuity. Words still decide what is true, who holds power, and how we understand the world. And until we ask who is writing our reality now, the ancient algorithm runs on, line by line, command by command, unchallenged, eternal, and still executing.